Hello friends, it has been about 1 week since patch 7.32e came out, so I thought I would talk about what I've seen developing, what looks good, and how this patch seems to be shaping out, keeping in mind that this is still fairly preliminary. The DPC season has just started, so it'll be pretty cool to see what the pros push at the highest level, but we play at a much lower level than the pros, so some heroes work in our pub games, then you really won't see them too much at the highest level, and I want to mention some of those. So the patch is relatively similar to the last one. There were some buffs and nerfs, so yes, heroes did go down, some heroes went up, but I'm still seeing heroes like Lina and Drow look fairly viable. Maybe not like, for example, in Lina, broken best hero, but still fairly good and just, a bit worse. Same with heroes like Broodmother and Beastmaster, nerfed, but still pretty good for this early tempo kind of meta. Strong lanes, push towers, close out the map, things like that. I'm still seeing a lot of that. However, two things have changed that are starting to push the meta a bit. So we've got the Meteor Hammer and the Radiance. I don't know if that's going to continue going on in the future, but right now everyone is experimenting with them, and so the meta is developing around this right now. Let's start with Meteor Hammer. So Meteor Hammer, right now everyone's building it, but I think it's legitimately probably going to be the best on offlane, and as people like tone it down, potentially, I think we'll still see offlaners building it because it functions in two ways. One, the buildup is not too bad. You get that ring of health for the laning stage, it helps you survive, you pick up the others, it's relatively cheap, and then once you have it, you can now chain stun it, because if you forgot, the buff is that it went from 2.5 seconds channel time to 2 seconds, and then the actual stun, instead of landing in 3 seconds, it lands in 2.5 seconds. So it's much easier to use, there's less time where you are just channeling and vulnerable, plus it's easier to combo with certain stuns, so like Sand King, Mars, DK, they can kind of combo it with their own abilities, and you get a lot of kills this way. You stun someone, Meteor Hammer, that's a good amount of damage on its own, plus any support in the area also hitting you, you're probably dead. If you leave the lane, you're like, okay, I can't deal with this combo, I'm going to get out, then they're going to use that Meteor Hammer to take the tower really quickly, and then they're going to farm with it, hitting stacked camps or just jungle camps, waves, push the tier 2, push the mid, things like that, and they're going to try to really push the tempo with this Meteor Hammer. Contrast that to the Radiance builds we're seeing from a lot of carries now. Heroes like Alchemist, Spectre, Abaddon with his 1.5 base attack time buff, Naga, Siren. These heroes are trying to build the Radiance. It's cheaper, but it's still relatively expensive. However, it's going to scale a lot better than Meteor Hammer, because the Meteor Hammer, it's good in the early game, but in the late game, you don't really want to be standing there channeling for 2 seconds, and a lot more tools exist to deal with it at that point, such as BKB, or status resistance, or the fact that they're just so tanky, they don't die in the 4 seconds, and then they pop a Satanic, and they kill you or something, heal back all the way up. So the Meteor Hammer is really good early to mid game, but the Radiance, slow build up early game, is going to really outshine in the mid to late game, especially as you pick up another item or two off that Radiance. So we're seeing carries who like that Radiance and they try to get there, the ones I mentioned. You're also seeing another way to deal with the Meteor Hammer, which is just to punish them before they get to the Meteor Hammer, and you don't go for Radiance. Heroes like Monkey King, Slark, Ursa, Luna, strong laners who, as you build for a Meteor Hammer, I said the Ring of Health helps you survive. That's true, but not true if they just kill you before you can really spend that time regenning. So these melee heroes are really good against these other melee heroes who are building the Meteor Hammers. So they go for a different build than the Radiance. They just they go for an early lane domination, and they kind of scale from there. And if these offlaners are planning for the Meteor Hammer and totally miss that timing, then they really drop down. Other carries who are doing well are, Slark, Jug, Lifestealer, who can just avoid the Meteor Hammer, Morphling, another one. People who just stay away, or ranged heroes like Lina and Drow. They're very hard to combo, depending on what Meteor Hammer builder is picked. It becomes more difficult to get that meteor tempo and push the game that way. And so then those carries have a good lane, they scale, and then, business as usual from there. So yeah, that's kind of the dynamic we've been seeing from the carry and the off lanes. From the mid lane, I don't play mid, so I don't have as much of a feeling here, but I have noticed more mobile heroes, people who can't get Meteor Hammer comboed, and can also try to make plays to buy time while their teammates build Radiance, or to punish the enemy who is trying to build Radiance. You go find them in their jungle, kill them. Heroes like Ember, Puck, Storm, I've seen Tinkers be very annoying, especially if you're trying to like scale up into this game, right? He works he works really well in the late game. If the Radiance builder's on your team, you're like, yeah, let's just delay. I'll be Tinker, be very annoying. Or you've got the early tempo team. You get that quick blink bots. You're joining all these fights with all this magic burst. It's very hard. Tinker is just like, I think, a good pub hero. I've seen OD do pretty well, builds Meteor Hammer himself, but he's also good with or against Meteor Hammers because you can just Astral for your teammates to set up, or you can Astral your teammates to save them from the Meteor Hammers. Plus, as these melee heroes start to rise up, you just Astral them and take them out of the fight. OD has always been very good in that regard. I'll kind of leave it at that for the mid lane. I don't have so much insight on that. The support meta right now is kind of revolving around this Radiance versus Meteor Hammer timings as well. So let's say for the 5 supports, if your carry is trying to build Radiance, then a lot of strong laners are looking good, such as Jakiro and Undying, Lich, Clockwork, Silencer. You help to slow down the enemy's Meteor Hammer timing while securing farm for that Radiance to come online fast for your team. If your teammate's not going Radiance and they're just picking a strong carry like Ursa Slark, then that's fine too. You go for kills off of that with these same strong supports. Another element that's pretty good is wave clear. So you want the Radiance to come online. You need to go to the late game. Even if they have a good Meteor Hammer game, but they struggle to push into you, then you're going to get to that late game timing you want. So again, heroes like Jakiro or Warlock, Rubik even, Crystal Maiden, Treant, I think he's worse than he was before, but he still can have a strong lane. He can still delay the game a lot. Leech Seed works really well with a Radiance team or against a Radiance team. So I think he still has a place in the meta, just not as strong. But many of these heroes just, you're like thinking about that Radiance ahead of time, right? Either trying to get there or play against it, because these items are just coming into almost every game I'm in, the Radiance and the Meteor Hammer. Now, some heroes like Omni Knight, we're not quite seeing in the pro scene as much, but I think he's just very good in pubs. He likes working with these like melee heroes a bit more. He has an easier time with that. As people are trying to Meteor Hammer combo, he comes in with a strong Dispel to disrupt that combo. As the Radiance comes up online on your team, you just want to buff that guy up, right? You have all those supporting spells. The laning stage, you just get through with a lot of heals. Same with like Warlock's heal, and then Warlock Upheaval has been very annoying, either as wave clear or as a setup for some of these melee heroes to just run down the enemy and get a kill. So that's kind of what I've been seeing from the 5 support role. From the 4 support role, a lot of the same. Either you're helping your offlaner get to a Meteor Hammer, so you want to be a ranged hero who can harass a lot, help secure range creeps. Maybe you combo with the Meteor Hammer as well, such as Mirana and Hoodwink. You add in a lot of damage like Skywrath, because the stun into Meteor Hammer, because you're channeling so long as the offlaner, you're not actually doing damage in that time. So who cares if you chain stun them for 3 seconds and then they walk away? That feels bad. So these supports who add in a lot of damage have a lot of value. As more melee heroes have become popular, ranged heroes are also good against that, or heroes who are just good against melees, such as Primal Beast as the 4 support, or the offlane, right? It's much easier to trample melee heroes than it was the ranged heroes. Clockwork and Tusk, also really good against melee heroes. These roaming supports who are still good if your offlane is not building Meteor Hammer, they're going the traditional, well, maybe not traditional, but like, the last patch, summons and auras, that tends to be a little weak on the initiating front, and then that's okay. You cover it as the 4 support. Muerta's on here. I actually think she's going to be a better core, either carry or mid lane, as Gunslinger gets figured out, like the best time to take it, the best time, like builds to go, gets a shard, gets an Ags. But right now her Q and her W are pretty powerful, and I think they work well with Meteor Hammer. You can either disrupt it from the enemy sense, you fear them and ruin their channel, or your offlaner just stun them for 3 seconds, and then you add another however long the fear is, like 2 seconds depending on the level, right? 2 seconds of lockdown, and the whole time you have the calling going, you have your ult going. Muerta actually adds a lot of spell damage while someone is locked down. So I've seen some impactful performances from Muerta in the 4 role. Let me know if there's a hero I didn't talk about that you think is really good and should be on here, or if someone on here is overrated. I would love to hear that. This is still very preliminary, so I will be adjusting it, and I'll make a more official version later on as the patch is a bit more stable. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.